Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here in attendance with me once more because today we have got something really cool to go through. We have got night one of SummerSlam, which took place last night. That was Saturday, the 2nd of August, over in MetLife Stadium. So we got a lot to break down here. We've got a lot to discuss. This is one of two nights. So obviously we're going to be going through this night first, and then we'll have our second night coming up later on. So, how about we break everything down and go straight through into the action, starting with our very first matchup of the night, which would see a tag team contest. This would be Jey Uso and Roman Reigns going up against Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker. So, the Bron Squad, as I've been calling them off off camera. So yeah, basically with this opening contest, we see Roman Reigns and Jey Uso teaming up to basically take on the bad guys, Seth Rollins, goons, whilst he's out and obviously handling his injury and stuff. Yeah, been a lot of build going into this one. Sort of a little bit of animosity between the four men. Basically, a lot of it's been recently Bron Breakker trying to sort of like elevate himself up to, maybe what we saw of Roman Reigns a few years ago and just, cutting similar promos and acting similar ways and stuff. And then obviously, tangling in with Jey Uso and obviously with Bronson Reed by his side, just all seemed to mesh quite nicely here into a tag team contest. But this would open the show. Throughout the matchup, we would see various things happen. We'd see, some good teamwork between Roman and Jey, especially towards the late stage where Roman would take a spear, saving Jey Uso, which would lead to the win straight afterwards. But there was a lot going on the outside as well in this one. With the announce tables and just generally just things outside the ring. There's quite a lot going on. In the end, Jey Uso and Roman Reigns would pick up the victory here. Jey Uso proven to be very important in the finish here. Roman takes a spear, and then Jey is able to handle Bronson Reed, and that would see the match out and be enough to get the victory. But Nick, what did you make of our opening contest here? Jey Uso and Roman Reigns picking up the victory over Bronson and Bron. I think we both saw this coming in the build up to this matchup, but did it live up to those expectations? And was it a good opener to the show?
Yeah, I would say it was a pretty good opener to the show. I think we kind of tossed back and forth the possibility of this main eventing and felt like it was probably best, considering that possibility of what could happen with the main event, whether or not we were sure on that how that would happen. So I think this was a good opening match. I would say this one definitely got maybe even more time than it needed. Definitely got plenty of time, but it didn't feel like it in the moment. It didn't feel like it was. I think it took close to 45 minutes. Of course, that includes entrances and whatnot. Lots of yeeting. Speaking of, I just call me old fashioned, but I just really don't. I love Jay's entrance. Don't get me wrong, but I do not like the running it back and all of that during the match. I feel like that. For whatever reason, that just doesn't set well with me. But that being said, the Bron Squad, I love that. I love that name. I miss the days where we got a new faction and we immediately had a name for them. So I agree. We should go ahead and call them the Bron Squad going forward until we get a better name for them. But yeah, this was a good match. I'm not sure quite what to take yet from the Roman kind of moving Jey out of harm's way to eat the spear. I'm also not sure what to take from Jey then hitting Bronson with the spear, super kick, and Uso splash to get the win. That felt like that was pretty. Want to say felt like it probably should have took a little more, maybe. But maybe I'm in the minority there. But yeah, a big win and statement for Jey, I suppose you could say that. But yeah, I think the winner here was never really in doubt, at least by the two of us. But yeah, I give this one an 8 out of 10. I felt like it was a fun way to start the match or start the show, and yeah, I just the way that the when happened, I think, just had me scratching my head a little bit, but not necessarily in a bad way, just in a I didn't see that coming, I guess. But yeah, how'd you receive this one, KP?
Well, I received it in the exact same way that you did. I also gave it an 8 out of 10. Looks like we're back to our old ways of giving similar ratings on these PLE reviews. But yeah, I think you've made a lot of great points there, to be fair. The whole running it back with the yeets during the matchup, nah, stick to that before the match. Okay, yeah, that's a lot anyway as it is. That's probably a bit too much for me, anyway. But doing it during the match, I think that maybe discredits a little bit from, your fellow wrestlers. especially when it's right at the very start. Like, there's not been that much offense. They're not really gassed out by that point, are they? So, they're not really that affected by the situation. They can get back into the ring pretty quickly at that point, that early. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe just try and avoid doing that going forward. But people love the yeets and they love doing that. So I can't see them ending it, which is a damn shame. But all the good things in this matchup, outweigh that massively. And to be fair, Jay comes out of it looking like a star. So, yeah, the ending was very much catered around him, just taking the weight upon himself, the responsibility on his shoulders, and, getting that victory, securing it for himself and Roman Reigns. And then, yeah, maybe you make a good point. Bronson, maybe he could have took a little bit more damage on the final few moments there to lead to that finish. But yeah, it was a very fun matchup. I think it was a good way to get things started, and the crowd seemed to be getting a bit louder as the match went on, sort of thing. So yeah, it was nice to see the sort of like the early transitions into like what felt like a really good tag team match towards the very end. So yeah, very good, quite chaotic, and a lot of fun to watch for sure. And yeah, similar rating to you, giving it an 8, obviously the same rating. So yeah, quite well received from both of us here at the Push. So, how about we go into our second match of the show, which would also be a tag team matchup, but this will be for the Women's Tag Team Championships. We'd see Judgment Day's Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez putting the titles on the line against Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair, who are not friends, as much as they say they're not. Maybe they'll be friends after this matchup, because coming towards the end of the contest, we would see a little bit of a disarray between Alexa and Charlotte. There will be an accidental punch to the face from Alexa to Charlotte Flair. But moments later, they'd be able to turn things around. Alexa would have Sister Abigail DDT waiting to be used upon Roxanne Perez. Raquel Rodriguez would get dealt with by Charlotte Flair. She would have a little bit of interaction with Alexa Bliss at the very end. And that would be enough then, once that DDT would be hit by Alexa Bliss, to secure the 1-2-3, and we have brand new women's tag team champions in the form of Alexa and Charlotte. So Nick, this second match of the night, I think we both predicted Alexa and Charlotte, if I'm rightly saying so, in our predictions video. What do you make of how the match went down? Are you happy that we have new tag team champions? What do you make of this team between Charlotte and Alexa? And where do Judgment Day's Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez go from here? There was no Liv Morgan interference, which I did touch up and I was hoping for in the build-up to this one. But obviously seeing this take place without, Liv Morgan being there, maybe that there could have been something a little bit more, but obviously, if she's not ready, she's not ready, so that can't be helped. But what did you make of the match? And yeah, what did you make of our new tag team champions?
So the interesting part to this match and kind of the where it lies on the card, I think to have that opening, very much lively tag matches start off the show. I thought to put this, tag match as well. First of all, putting a tag match back to back is something in itself, but then to put this match after that first one that had the attention of the crowd, very much were hot for it, I think was kind of putting them behind the 8 ball. So whether that was everyone else's kind of opinion or just mine, I felt like this one suffered because of that. I felt like had they put it somewhere else in the card, is my long-winded way of what I'm trying to say here, I feel like it would have been better received. As for the match and the winner, I felt like the match was good enough. Like I said, I felt like it suffered a bit just because of what it was following. And then, I'm conflicted because, as you as you mentioned, we both predicted Charlotte and Alexa winning, just because my thing was you can't keep Charlotte down for that long, and they couldn't and they didn't. But obviously Alexa Bliss and Charlotte kind of doing this whole "we're not friends" bit. I felt like both could have gone on longer without the titles. Continuing on, and then maybe when they finally realize they are friends, maybe that could have clicked, and then they go after the titles then. But this is something different, something interesting. I think we can all agree to that, and that Charlotte's clearly having a better time with things lately. So you have to feel good for her on that as well. And I was kind of on the fence about it in the predictions. I would have preferred Judgment Day kept the titles, and I think you're kind of on the same page with that as well. but you can kind of go either way with the Judgment Day. Obviously, now they have lost, so there's going to be some conflicts, and then I'm sure Liv will get brought back up, and that'll kind of right itself too. So yeah, would have preferred the Judgment Day to win, but I'm also happy for Charlotte and Alexa. They've both been without gold for a while as well, so I'm okay with it. As far as the match, not something I'm going to come back and visit for any sort of while. I will say this: Roxanne Perez definitely is the MVP of this match. She seems to be kind of racking up those MVPs and everything she's in. Michael Cole kind of alluded to that as well. She's absolutely made the most of this year so far, and looking forward to what she can do going forward. But yeah, the match itself, I gave a rating of a 6.5. I went back and forth between a low 6 and a 7, but I'm just kind of meet in the middle. Nothing crazy, but I'm okay with the winners, I guess.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you just said there. I think when it comes to this matchup, following the first contest of the night, having a double tag team, start the show is quite interesting. So yeah, I think I would have preferred maybe something a little bit different to go in between these two, maybe sandwich in between, to sort of like go, tag team match, singles, tag team, just to split things up a little bit and not have like solid tag, at the very start of the show. I love tag team matches. I think they're absolutely brilliant. When they're done absolutely right, they're incredible. This one, yeah, maybe not so incredible, but it was good. It was fun, and there were some moments there that I think you can take away from this and you can use going down the line. Obviously, when Liv Morgan comes back, that's going to be very interesting to see how that sort of dynamic sort of slots back into place, where we're going to go from there. But then obviously, yeah, with Alexa and Charlotte, new tag team champions, definitely keen to see, how they sort of take their grasp on the titles and sort of like what they could do with them going forward, their relationship with one another. Are they really, this this team that they've sort of seemingly bonded together to be? Yeah, there's a lot of questions, a lot of things that we can go from here. But yeah, the match itself, it was fun. It wasn't anything like incredibly special or anything, but it was yeah, it was a good moment for Alexa and Charlotte, and I can't help but smile and just just enjoy the fact that Charlotte is having so much fun. We say this on our weekly podcast, and there's a reason why we do so. But it's great to see her, in like a more natural sort of more enjoyable and fun type of moment in her life, which is great to see. So very, very happy with that. But yeah, the match itself, I gave it a 7 out of 10. So yeah, ever so slightly above what you went with. But I can definitely see why you might sort of want to go a little bit lower. But yeah, 7 for me personally. I thought it was pretty good, and there were some nice little moments there I think we could sort of like take going forward, which is quite nice. And that sort of that relationship between Charlotte and Alexa with that punch, I think, it's something quite small, but it's just sort of to make it seem like, these guys, they're not quite on the same page yet, but they're working on it and they're getting there. So I thought it was quite a nice moment. Little things. How about we go on to our third match of the show, which would see what I hope is the finale of this feud, and it is Karrion Kross one-on-one with Sami Zayn. For obviously everybody that have been keeping up with this one, we know the mind games of Karrion Kross. We know what he wants from Sami, and that he really wants him to admit that he is a liar, and that he does have a mean streak within him, and that he can bring it out, and that in order to win the world title, he has to go to those sort of depths. In this matchup, we saw those sort of inner demons being tested, especially by Scarlett and by Kross, and it was more so like Karrion Kross with his constant, just tell me you're a liar. He would constantly say things like that throughout the matchup, really trying to get into the psyche of Sami Zayn. There would be a moment with Scarlett with a steel pipe, and she would essentially present it to Sami and Zayn. Oh my god, she would essentially present it to Sami Zayn. Sami would look at it, he'd actually take a hold of it, and he would basically just contemplate it for a little while, before ultimately throwing it down to ringside, and would pick up the win a few moments later once Kross had sort of like got back up to his feet. And yeah, Sami Zayn winning this matchup. So this could be quite a controversial conversation here. I'm quite looking forward to this one because you could have argued that Kross should have won, and I wouldn't blame you for doing that. So, Nick, what did you make of the match itself? What do you think is the reason that Sami Zayn won this one over Karrion Kross? Where does Kross go from here? And why did they make a little bit of a deal of that little interaction on Raw between them both, saying that the winner has to do this after the matchup. Well, we didn't really see any of that afterwards. Maybe it comes on Raw, maybe it doesn't. We can obviously wait and see what happens. But where's your head at for this matchup with Sami Zayn beating Karrion Kross?
All right, guys, buckle up. This is going to be a bit, and I'm happy to eat my words. If all this comes back to bite me, I'll say it on there. I'll say, you know what, I was wrong. I'm impatient, and it's on me. But for what we've gotten, first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and get the rating out of the way. Probably one of the lowest ratings outside of just not available. Didn't rate it at all. Didn't feel like it was worthy of it, and I almost wanted to do that for this one. I gave it a 3 out of 10. First of all, this whole feud or whatever, like many of Kross's prior, and just mean absolutely nothing. The only thing they did, they teased, Sami fighting his inner demons and all that, but he didn't. Nothing happened. Nothing came from that. He picked up the pipe and looked like he maybe thought about it, but that was that. Kross has been flirting with, people clearly want him to be pushed, which I don't think should always equate to a push. Don't get that twisted or anything. But something just doesn't add up here. I think Kross is clearly wrong someone higher up in WWE, because whether you agree that he should be pushed or you buy into the hype, he's been treated poorly. I think that's fair to say. From his main call up to just the absolute butchering of his character, to seemingly always being on the edge of getting a push and then never actually getting it. What was the point of having this match on SummerSlam? I'm still waiting on a reason why this match was on SummerSlam. It's just absolutely pointless. I've seen weekly shows 10 times better than this match. I'm sorry to do this to your boy Sami, but he should be doing bigger things. Kross should be doing bigger things. This is just an absolute waste of everyone's time. And again, if they end up making a story out of this and making it work, I'll admit the fact that I was wrong. But for now, this is a complete and utter waste of time. And I think Kross's contract is up soon. And if I'm him, I run for it. He's clearly not being taken seriously here, and can be doing bigger and better things elsewhere. I rarely say that about anyone, but this is just, there's clearly something wrong with the system, and the communication, and what he deserves to be treated at is better than what he's getting treated as. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. What about you, KP?
Well, I'm not going to pretend that this match was great, or if it, it meant something, or if it was, worth having a SummerSlam. I basically agree with everything you just said. I'll get my rating out of the way with as well first. I didn't quite give it as low as you did. I gave it double it, actually. I gave it a 6. I gave it a 6 purely for the fact that this match, it happened. It was fine. And nothing actually went wrong during it, but nothing really was great about it. It was just somewhere in the middle, and it was fine. Maybe a little bit of bias from me, perhaps, because it's a Sami Zayn match. But honestly, maybe I gave it a 6 just thinking that hopefully this is the end of it, and these guys can both move on to bigger and better things, like you've already mentioned. Feel free to chime in here, by the way, if you ever need to at any point, because I think I will have a little bit of a conversation about this now as well, like you did. Sami, yeah, I don't understand why Sami lost. It was 2 weeks ago on Monday, wasn't it? Yeah, 2 weeks ago on Raw. If we're going to go into this event, at SummerSlam with Karrion Kross with the same feud, why did we not just have Sami win that match on Raw, and then we could have just had, somebody like another. We could have had another match on SummerSlam, right? Like, this didn't do anything for anybody. Like, this situation was over before it really started on this particular night. I'm a Sami Zayn fan massively, and I have never been so uninterested in a Sami Zayn match before in my life. Like, this meant absolutely nothing. In terms of what it means going forward, yeah, we could both be wrong. We could be, and we'll like Nick's already said, I'll put my hands up and I'll admit that as well. If this actually means something going forward in the future, we'll look back on this and we'll think, hell, we were both wrong. Fair enough. Okay, it is what it is. But there wasn't a lot in this match to take. We had the Sami Zayn moments where he maybe was a little bit more aggressive. And that was basically that. There was the moment where he was literally looking at the steel pipe. Did anyone seriously believe he was going to take that pipe and actually hit Kross with it? I guarantee you ask the 50,000 plus people in that audience, and maybe one crazy person in the crowd maybe says yes. But that's about it. But in terms of where we go from here, Karrion Kross, I agree with you. His character is very intriguing, is very interesting. It has a cool aura and dynamic to it. But from what he has accomplished during this gimmick, is always putting over his opponent, and that's fine. Some people do that, and they make a great career off of it. But Karrion Kross is quite unique with his gimmick. It's quite different. It's not just like a classic, like a JD McDonough, for example. He hasn't got anything special with his gimmick or anything unique, but he's always the guy that puts his opponent over and makes him look incredible doing so. Karrion Kross can do that, but he's also got that other side of him that also should be coming out and should be doing a bit more with it as well. And they have dropped the ball on that. I really think they have. Because they could have done something a bit more with it, and they could A, make him more intense, B, make him mean a lot more, and C, make him win matches on PLEs against big opponents, because then that pushes him up even higher, and then that makes people take him more seriously. Sami Zayn was basically not taking him seriously for how long was this feud going on for? Months? Maybe even up to a year or so? I don't know. It felt like forever. But in the early stages, Sami basically didn't want anything to do with Kross because he didn't think anything of him. He didn't really care. And why didn't he care? Because Kross, it doesn't mean much, right? You had that sort of change of character at the end of this whole feud that they have with everybody, with the likes of Styles, with the likes of Drew McIntyre, with the likes of other people in the past, whatnot. And is the same going to happen to Sami? According to Kross, no, because he hasn't been able to get through to him. But he's been able to get through to the likes of Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods in the past, and all those other people. So yeah, I don't know. This feels different. Maybe this is just like the ultimate babyface Sami Zayn. Is that a gimmick? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. We'll have to wait and see. But that's what I have to say about it. And I don't know if you got any bounce back from that, Nick, but I'm ready to move on if you are.
Yeah, not really. Just other than the fact that, us, both of us saying if we're wrong, we'll come out and say so. But all of his past feuds tell us that we're not, and that's one thing. And I think the biggest thing for me is how this match went down. I think it felt like it was like under 10 minutes. Maybe it wasn't. I didn't look at the official count, but it took one haluva kick. And that was that. If you're going to, even similar to JD, how you kind of mentioned, if he's going to lose these feuds, have him, be in for a fight. Sami is the one of the best at doing these, comeback, babyface comebacks. Have him do that. Have him take, have Kross eat 2 or 3 haluva kicks. We see that happened all the time in other matches. But for whatever reason, Kross down and out just like that. I'm looking forward to the explanation of this one day, because to me it just feels like Kross is clearly on someone's bad side, and that's the only thing I can take away from it.
Just thought I'd have a quick check whilst you were discussing that then. Just over 8 minutes for that match between Sami and Karrion Kross. So yeah, not even getting to 10 minutes. It is quite the interesting talking point for sure. But I think we've spoken enough about that one. Crazily enough, we're going to talk about an even shorter match that happened after this. And we would have a one-on-one contest between Tiffany Stratton, the current WWE Women's Champion, and Jade Cargill, the Queen of the Ring. So we all know what Jade's been through, in the last year or so, being taken out by Naomi. We didn't know at the time, but it was Naomi. Clawing her way back, getting to Elimination Chamber, taking out Naomi, having that big feud with Naomi going into the likes of Evolution, literally as recently as this past month, and defeating her again. Go back a little bit further. We had the Queen of the Ring tournament. She would win that one, defeating Asuka in the final over in Saudi Arabia. She's had a very big year. She's won a lot of matches. She's being built up. We went into this one, I'm pretty sure both you and I, Nick, saying that this was the moment for Jade Cargill to step up and to, take her spot at the top of the mountain at the expense of Tiffany Stratton, who has had a fantastic year, has had a very good reign, has beaten some very big names. But actually, Tiff's added another name to her impressive title reign because she defeats Jade Cargill in this matchup. This one would go just over 7 minutes. This one, literally just over 7:05 with this clocking it in. Very, very quick match. The shortest on the card for the night. I thought this one could have been a lot better, but how did you rate it? Do you think that Tiffany Stratton beating Jade is the right result? And why do you think this one was so short? Is it because of the likes of what we've seen in the past with Jade, being a little bit green? I think you mentioned that on the predictions video, actually being quite green herself. Do you think maybe she's still suffering from that she's not quite ready for this position yet? Because if so, why did they have a win Queen of the Ring tournament? Couple of questions there. What do you think?
So yeah, well, this one was obviously, I think, too short. Having said that, though, I understand why it was, as you just mentioned. Jade is still green, and Tiffany's not a veteran by any means, and I always kind of, this matchup had always kind of scared me a little bit, made me a little nervous because I didn't know how they would get on in the ring because of both of them still being, very new to the business. Tiffany obviously being, the champion, but most of her matches, have been good but rough, and then she's usually in the ring with a veteran. Obviously, they don't have a veteran in this ring to kind of play that off on. So I 100% understand the reasons why this match was short. I still feel like they probably could have made it, probably at least twice as long if they have a like a slow burn kind of thing going, or a couple more spots, or some holds in there, something to make it feel like we've seen Raw main events last longer. We've seen just Raw regular matches last longer than the 7-minute bout. It just didn't feel like it lived up to the hype of, as you mentioned, Queen of the Ring, Jade taking all of that to have this. So yeah, I understand the reasons why they did it. I just felt like maybe they went to the extreme to a bit. As for the match itself, in terms of rating and all of that, my jaw was on the floor when Tiffany won. First of all, we were both very confident, not only picking Jade to win, but very confident in doing so, thinking this was the end. This was the time for Jade. Tiffany time was over. This was time for Jade to sink or swim, as we had been stating. But I'm not mad about it because I think this shows maturity on WWE's side. Yes, they took in Jade to be this big, huge star, but maybe they feel like she's not quite ready yet. And they have the reason. We see it on our side. We see on our side that she makes some mistakes here and there, and she still is green. So you know what? I'm okay with it. And hell of a resume for Tiffany Stratton, by the way. She's racking up those wins and sitting here thinking who is going to take that title from her. And they've done a great job of building her up. And so I have confidence in the system that they will wait until they feel the moment is right. Because, as I mentioned, I was nervous with this match, thinking of how these two would get along. I think, like I said, I think they could have done more, but I'm happy with the result. And as for a rating, I gave this one a 6 out of 10, just because it was so short. I feel like if this one gotten even like another 5 minutes, I think that would have made all the difference in the world and made it feel like SummerSlam worthy. What about you, KP? How'd you like this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those weird ones because I found myself, just sort of like easing into it for the first couple of minutes. And then when it got to like the 5th minute or so, I want to say, I started to really start to enjoy it. And I was like, okay, right, now we're starting to really get somewhere here. We're starting to pick things up. The pace is quickening up, and we're getting into those the more intense sort of back and forths here. And then it just suddenly just ended. And I say suddenly, in the moment, it felt like a natural way of winning it, but another 5-10 minutes down the line, perhaps that would have been okay. But because it was so soon in the match, there wasn't really a lot of content to go through, and it's hard to really sort of discuss a large part of the contest because there's not really anything to go with. So I mean, I give this one a 6.5 out of 10. I think if this match was 5 minutes longer, it would have possibly been up there like a 7.5, depending obviously what was included. But it's hard to give this one a high rating. It really is, just because of how short it was. So it was definitely better than Sami and Karrion, but that's not saying an awful lot. But just Tiffany she's doing very, very well. I can't really fault what she's doing at the moment because every time she gets in the ring, she always looks pretty, consistent and stuff. But it's hard to really go with so little in a matchup, and that's not a slam to either of these ladies, but just generally speaking, you're given just over 7 minutes on a PLE. What can you really do with that? That's not really an awful lot. So maybe a step backwards for the women's matchup here, considering what we're going to probably get tonight with the likes of Io, Naomi, and Rhea. That I can't see that being anywhere near 7 minutes. So, and if it is, what are we doing? But yeah, I feel like you take obviously the two women's championship matches, and you look at one, you look at the other, you think, wow, there's quite a difference here with how it's playing out. But yeah, maybe you made a really good point. Tiff always sort of bounces off, the veteran in the ring, and sort of like looks to them for guidance, maybe, and they make a really good match off of that. So with Jade Cargill, probably being the the lesser of the two experienced women here in this matchup, yeah, maybe that is a different dynamic for Tiffany, and maybe we got to try and find a way to try and to get past that and to make Tiffany look better. Um, you know, when she's with somebody who isn't, a big veteran of the business, because at this point, who does Tiff have left? Maybe a Bianca Belair, maybe someone like that. I guess we go from there. But yeah, I mean, I've basically had my say on this one. 6.5, I think, is pretty fair, but I would have loved to have seen more. I think it just ended way too quickly, and obviously that's the main part of all this. So let's move on. We've got another tag team match to discuss next, and this would see Jelly Roll getting into the ring for the very first time in a matchup in WWE. He would be tagging with Randy Orton to take on Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre. I had some very strong opinions going into this matchup. Why are we having another celebrity get involved in matches when we've got so many guys on the roster that would love to be on SummerSlam? Take an opportunity away from somebody else. Jelly Roll goes into this one saying, he's not taking an opportunity away from anybody. He's working hard to try and give the fans what they want from this matchup. And okay, yeah, that's fine. If you want to work that hard to make the match as good as it can be, let a wrestler be in that spot then. That's the simplest thing, and that's the best thing you can do. But won't dwell too much on that. I've had my say. Let's talk about the match itself. Honestly, this was quite fun. It had its moments. There were some parts of the match where I quite enjoyed. I think the dynamic between Logan Paul and Jelly Roll especially was quite interesting. Just talking about them two specifically for a moment. Then obviously you separate them two from like Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton, who obviously have had their beef recently as well. I think, yeah, the two singles matches being brought together as a tag contest, it made for an interesting dynamic. But to be fair to Jelly Roll, he took some very big bumps, and he didn't shy away. He was absolutely beaten and battered and bruised from this contest. I'm sure he's going to be feeling it this morning, when he's waking up in his hotel room, whatever. So, yeah, I got a bit of respect towards him. He definitely laid out on the line there, and he took his fair share of bumps. So fair play to him in that respect. But honestly, Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul getting the victory in the end here, I did not see coming whatsoever. I think we both said that it would be the other way around on this one, so I'm pleasantly surprised by this outcome. But what about you, Nick? What did you make of Jelly Roll's performance and being in there? He's not a wrestler, but he did put himself on the line, and he tried to make it as good as he could do. To be fair, he kept up to his word on that front. And then B, the result as well, Drew and Logan winning is quite surprising for me. But yeah, what did you make of the matchup as a whole, and also the outcome as well as Jelly Roll's performance?
Yeah, so I think it was quite clear that neither of us really, this match wasn't for us. The diehards, if you will, it wasn't for us. But regardless, Jelly Roll has, we've heard nonstop rumblings of how much this guy just loves the business and has put in the work. And I think that said, like, he doesn't look awkward. Like, it's not awkward being here. It's not awkward for him in the ring. And I think, obviously, putting him around the three individuals that he has certainly helps. But, yeah, I have no issues. Great on the mic. And, it's easier to do a tag match. I think, obviously, if this was a one-on-one match, we'd probably be singing a different tune. But for what this was, it was a fun SummerSlam moment. And, yeah, like you said, mad respect to Jelly Roll for doing that bump, particularly the table spot. Logan Paul just doing Logan Paul things, jumping off of the ring over to the table. Those tables, these in particular, are not forgiving. And you even saw like Logan like bounce back up off of him from the initial impact. So yeah, like you said, he's going to be feeling that one this morning. But yeah, nothing but respect for Jelly Roll. Do I want to see him in the ring every week? No, but this was a fun moment. And then yeah, speaking of fun moments, the outcome being Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre. I think we both said quite clearly, behind the Jade winning confidence, factor, this one was probably second in line, thinking that Jelly Roll and Randy Orton are going to win because it's SummerSlam and it's just a moment, and that's kind of what they do on these kind of celebrity involvement things. But Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre get the win, which, it makes sense. You have a wrestler and a celebrity versus, I hate to say it, but I consider Logan Paul a wrestler now. He's just as good, and I'd argue some, even better than some of the, permanent talent we have here. So, yeah, it makes sense that Logan and Drew would win, and Drew and Randy really let Logan and Jelly have the spotlight for the most part. And so, yeah, I think this is a great outcome, and just WWE using logic to come up with a winner, and I thought that was great as well. If you were a new person coming into this match and watching these four, I think it'd be obvious that Jelly Roll was the newest of the bunch. But after that, like Logan Paul, you can hate him, as a person if you want. But this man just gets wrestling, and always giving us a highlight, and always showing up and showing out. But yeah, I thought this was a great match, great moment. I gave this one 7 out of 10, which is way higher than I thought I was going to give it. What about you, KP? How did you like this one in terms of the match itself and the moment, I guess, as well?
I gave it a 7 out of 10 as well. And basically for the same reasons that you glossed over. Logan, he just never has a bad match, does he? Like you said, he always gives us a moment to look back on, to remember, crazy announce table spot or whatever. There's always something to take from a Logan Paul match going forward. And I think realistically, just how the match played out in the end, I was just really pleasantly surprised. I genuinely expected Jelly Roll to come on in, get the celebrity appearance, get a victory, just have a feel-good moment. But he didn't need that, to be fair. Like, I don't really think anything got taken away from the fact that, that he was on the losing side. He put in a very valiant effort, obviously, being sort of like carried over to the bottom of the ramp, and then, turning around, seeing Randy get beaten up, and then, just valiantly getting back in and getting into it. From a story perspective, it was a pretty good way to go through the matchup. And it makes sense because obviously, he can't be in there throughout the entirety of the matchup. His cardio isn't going to be as good as the likes of Logan and Randy and Drew. But for what he put into it, like you say, respect to him, and he did a good job of it. And yeah, the match itself was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, which I'm obviously very pleased about. And I don't want to go into too much about like Jelly Rolls, because we've spoken so much about him. But with Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton, maybe that's not quite done yet. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul alliance here going into this one is quite fascinating. So maybe if that does continue going forward, that's very interesting to see, where exactly that takes them. So I'm definitely keen to see where we go from here. But Jelly Roll's performance, he can look back on that. He can hold his head high, and it was a fun tag team match. So that's the main thing. So let's go into our main event. This would be the World Heavyweight Championship match between CM Punk, the number one contender after winning a gauntlet match a few weeks ago on Raw, taking on Der Ring General Gunther for that World Heavyweight Championship. So a lot of the conversation going into this one was the best in the world stuff between the both men. Gunther, he is the best in the world because he is the World Heavyweight Champion. CM Punk's obviously moniker has been always that he is the best in the world, and he lives by that mantra each and every single day. How was the match how was it gonna go when these two were both in the ring? Now, obviously, Gunther and Punk are very different people. One is a lot bigger than the other one. One is a lot, older than the other one. But in terms of the match itself, I quite enjoy the dynamic between the both men here, to be fair, because when you take the power of Gunther and maybe the fragility of CM Punk, you maybe think that Gunther's going to absolutely run riot and destroy Punk in this contest. And to be fair, for the most part of the matchup, he did exactly that. Punk took so much offense and was beaten, battered, bruised, blooded throughout the entirety. But CM Punk would fight back as well, and he would actually hit Gunther where it hurt. Gunther would actually celebrate a little bit too early on in the contest, where he'd be stood on the table, he'd be having his arms wide, just sort of like very similar to that of Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania when he won the World Heavyweight Championship, last year against Seth Rollins, and then Punk would be there to just sweep the legs underneath Gunther, drop his head onto the announce table, and that would cause him to bust open, blood all over his face. Gunther not being able to see and stuff, a little bit of a panic towards the end of the matchup, a little bit of back and forth, sleeper hold, CM Punk getting out of it, and then eventually hitting not one but two GTSs, and CM Punk is the new World Heavyweight Champion at the very end of SummerSlam. So breaking down just this match to start with here, Nick, what did you make of A, the dynamic between Gunther and Punk and the best in the world, stuff going into this one? B, Punk beating Gunther. I'm sure you're absolutely thrilled about that one. And C, just where do you rate this in terms of your estimations going into this matchup? Did it live up to possibly the hype going into it, or maybe was it a bit better or worse? Where's your head at for this one? How did you find it?
So yeah, for the match itself, I recognize that match isn't going to be for everyone. This was a very, very slow burn match. Definition of a slow burn match, I'd say. Punk taking around. I was genuinely trying to figure out probably how much offense he took. It felt like he took like at least around 90% of the offense here. Gunther, punished him. But that's kind of how Punk goes. He can take all the offense and finishers, if you will, and still kick out. But that's kind of what we saw here. Gunther, executing his normal blueprint, getting in, all of the offense, and then getting too cocky, which seemingly is a pattern that Gunther needs to work on. And that costing him. They busted open. We rarely see that anymore. So something big's about to go down. And then when we get back in the ring, Gunther taking not one but two GTSs. And after the first one, the moment of him kind of swaying back and forth on his feet, the fact that he didn't get knocked down by the GTS. I thought that was huge for Gunther in terms of keeping him safe, and then being bloodied was just what a moment, what a scene. And then taking that second one to knock him out. Like I said, match isn't for everyone, but I loved it, and I genuinely had no idea who was going to win. Throughout the match, it just felt like, this feels like a Punk kind of match. He'll eat out this offense, then he'll come back and he'll get knocked down one more time, but then he'll still come back and win. It felt like that was how it was going to go, but then Gunther genuinely just continually dishing out the offense on CM Punk. So I think this one I would say it exceeded my expectations, honestly. Definitely one of Punk's better matches since he's come back. Granted, he ate a ton of offense, but in terms of storytelling, I thought this was wonderful. Chef's kiss. Really loved this one. As far as rating for the actual match itself, I gave this one 9 out of 10. So best match of the night for me. And that's just without the extracurricular activities that happened after the match. What about you, KP? How'd you like the match itself?
Yeah, I found myself quite captivated with the match, to be fair. Like I sort of glossed over a moment ago, just the dynamic between the both men. I think it was quite fascinating, for the longevity of the contest. Punk with a very, 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 just destroyed persona come the end of the match. He looked absolutely broken. And that's an average match with Gunther, to be fair. Let's be honest here. But no, I think the way they sort of made Punk, have to dig from underneath, had sort of crawl his way up, to fight Gunther. They did it quite smartly, and it made a lot of sense. It wasn't anything that maybe you think would be a little unpredictable. Well, no, maybe a little bit predictable, or maybe sort of it wouldn't make any sense really in the grand scheme of things. We've seen a lot of matches with CM Punk in recent memory where he's taken finisher after finisher after finisher after finisher and still kicked out every single time. Now he did take a couple of power bombs, and he was in the sleeper on a couple of occasions, but I didn't get the same feeling that I did in those previous matches from Punk in this one, where he just took too much offense and was able to kick out every single time. So at least didn't have that going on for me there. But yeah, I think they made the right call here, to be honest with you, with CM Punk winning against Gunther in the main event of SummerSlam Night 1, because it's just a big moment. You know, it's obviously Punk's first title in what, like around 12 years? I think it is, something like that on WWE. So it's been a long time coming. And Gunther, you know, this is a man who has always been in the title picture, near enough. 80% of his time in WWE, he's been a champion. So do we now have a time where Gunther maybe goes a little while without being a champion? And I'm not talking like a month or two. I'm talking like a good 7, 8, 9 months where he has no championships and he has to sort of like go on to something different. Because if that's the case, I wouldn't mind seeing something different from Gunther, because we do have some people in, you know, in the company and, you know, in history that are booked for championship after championship after championship. But then when they don't have a title, it's almost as if they're irrelevant. They don't know what to do with them, and they struggle to find their place. So hopefully we get something different with Gunther. We can push him into some different direction where he's interesting without having the gold. But I say, you know, Punk is the champion at the end of SummerSlam. We did have a little extra scene at the end. As Punk was celebrating, he'd be in the ring holding his title up high, and suddenly you would hear the music of Seth Rollins. So there was rumors, you know, quite a lot going around that Seth's injury wasn't so much really as bad as we thought it was. I, at first, and very, very, you know, close to SummerSlam, we're still under the impression that his injury was, you know, was legit and it was accurate. But Seth Rollins comes out and he's on crutches, and you've got Paul Heyman next to him with the Money in the Bank contract, the briefcase, and yeah, Seth is not in ring gear, so he's sort of saying like down. There's no way Punk can hear him, but he's sort of shouting down as if to say like, you know, you better watch yourself. As soon as I'm healed, I'm coming for you. Your days are numbered with the title. This yada yada yada. Seth Rollins turns around and he's sort of like he's limping towards the back. He sort of stops in his tracks, and then one of the most iconic moments I think that, you know, has probably happened recently, just the two crutches that Seth Rollins has, he literally just like pushes both to the side, and then he just stands tall. Like, for me, that was a really awesome moment, and something that I will probably get goosebumps watching in a few years' time. But yeah, that moment there, the crowd were getting really loud. They know what's about to go down, and they realize the situation. And then Seth turns around, takes off his jacket, grabs the contract, and storms to the ring. Punk is completely broken, as I've already mentioned, and he can't do anything. Seth grabs Jess Carr, one of the officials, one of the referees, brings her into the ring with him, beats down CM Punk with the Money in the Bank contract, proceeds to hand it over to the referee, cashes in officially, hits a stomp, and walks out of SummerSlam as your brand new World Heavyweight Champion. So Seth Rollins has recently said that he will stop at nothing to make sure that CM Punk has no success when it comes to winning World Championships. Now, you could argue, you know, CM Punk still did that. He won the world title. But did he get a proper moment to really soak it in, to enjoy it, to appreciate the moment? Maybe he didn't, because maybe he was getting there, but the second he might have got to that part, Seth was there and he was ready to cash in. These mind games that he's done over the last, you know, number of months, he's fooled people, he's tricked people, and I was included in that, and I think you were as well. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were. What did you make of? Let's break this down. Of first and foremost, the lies and deceit of Seth Rollins with this injury. How do you make the decision that they actually made to do this? You know, to I'm guessing to cancel that. You know, just the way they ended the match with LA Knight at Saturday Night's Main Event. Perhaps that was included as part of this. I'm assuming it probably was. So what did you make of that decision alone? And then seek the cash in. You know, it's an iconic moment, but where does it live up to in those cash in moments over the years? Was it an all-time moment?
So short answer is yes, I do believe it is. Will it live up to his first one? No, I'm not sure anything ever will. But I think in terms of the best Money in the Bank briefcase holders, I think Seth is far and out the best, and I'm not sure he will ever be topped. But yeah, I loved this for many reasons. First of all, I love the legitimacy that they did sell with this one. I think, and this is why I'm always skeptical to believe any injuries for this exact reason. Fool me once, but not, you can't fool me 100 times. I don't buy the injuries until I see them in a surgery recovery room. And even then, I'm still skeptical sometimes. But yeah, I did not think this was legitimate, but because of how serious they had kind of played it off, not as showing up and that sort of thing. I was definitely on the fence about it, but I felt like it wasn't legitimate. But that it didn't take anything away from this moment. I will say that, having obviously being a Seth and Drew guy much more than a CM Punk guy, and probably wondering why I'm bringing up Drew. Obviously, we saw the reverse side of this with Drew and CM Punk. Drew getting the title and then quickly being taken advantage of by Punk, or helped being taken advantage of by Punk. So revenge is a best dish, best served cold, and this was sweet, sweet revenge. So I love that aspect of it. No one walks away looking weak here either. I think that's my probably my favorite part about this whole thing. CM Punk obviously looked good. Gunther, obviously looked really good as well. And then Seth, obviously, it always looks good, but now he looks like he outsmarted everyone. And him and his faction standing tall and standing over CM Punk in the show. That was just, love him or hate him. That was a moment, and one for me that will live on forever as one of the best cash-ins of all time. So, I love this one. Great moment for me.
It really was. It was an all-time cash in, and maybe it wasn't quite the height of the century, but the ruse of the century has a really good ring to it, and I think that definitely sort of like caps off this entire deceit that we've been led through in the past couple of months. Just credit to Rollins and whoever's idea this was to go down this fake injury route. I think it was brilliant. I think it was genius. And just the way it sort of like tied in with CM Punk, obviously, as well, with the history that they both have between each other. It just ticks all the boxes. It's absolutely perfect and it's fantastic. What a moment. What a way to end. Great cash in. One of probably my favorite cash ins, to be fair. And like you said, there's no better Money in the Bank holder than Seth Rollins. Let's just stop the conversation. It's done. It's dead in the water. Argue with a wall. Seth is the greatest person to ever hold the Money in the Bank contract, and there will be no one better than that. It's going to be extremely, extremely hard to top it. But in terms of the overall for SummerSlam Night 1, obviously we've still got a second night to come. Still got 6 matches, which, could arguably steal the weekend. Any of them, really. Those stipulations are crazy. We look at this card and we think, in terms of the matches between this show and Night 2, there are so many stipulation matches on Night 2, whereas all of these are regular matches. There isn't really anything like out there or just unordinary between any of these. You got a regular tag match, you got a regular tag match, regular one-on-one, regular one-on-one, regular tag, regular one-on-one. So there was no gimmicky stuff. Whereas tomorrow could be completely crazy. Anything could happen, chaotic, it could be carnage. But in terms of Night 1, for what the match card had and for what actually happened throughout the night, I think you could argue that some definitely hit and some definitely didn't. What did you make of Night 1, Nick? In terms of these matches, did they live up to your estimation? Maybe your highs and lows of the night.
So the actual average of my match ratings for the night is 6.5, but bumping that up to 7 just because we rounded up because of the moments we had. To me, the pros very much outweigh the cons. And you take out the Sami Kross match, you have a really good show. And while on paper looks like very much you could almost call a pre-show to Night 2. Obviously, you alluded to that. Night 1 looking way better than Night 2. or excuse me, night 2 looking way better than night 1. So with that, I'd call this night a success. Walk away with definitely some moments, and obviously the last main event being the biggest moment. And night 2 definitely has the work cut out for him in terms of takeaway moments, because it will be hard to top that, the ending of the first night. So, but every single match is a title match tonight. So I think that in itself proves that we are in for a hell of a show tonight. I think it will, in the grand scheme of things, be better than night 2. At least I'm very hopeful that it will be. But in terms of night 1, I feel like you have to call it a success. I think they could have probably done a better job at picking and choosing which matches were to go on one night. But in the grand scheme of things, night 2 will always probably be bigger and better than night 1, just by definition and what they want us to walk away with. So regardless, I enjoyed night 1, definitely had pros and cons, but I walked away with more positives than negatives. So that I call that a success.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. Really, I think that naturally speaking, night 2 does seem to be a lot more intriguing and appealing, for sure. But I think based on what we had here across the night, it seemed to me. I don't mean this in disrespect, but this is sort of like it's got a very like a B tier PLE vibe to it. Like there are 6 matches on the card. You got one standout match being the main event, which is what you should have, and then the rest of them they sort of like just seem to fit into place. A good opener. And then, decent bits here across the card, maybe a couple of, matches that didn't quite live up to the estimations. But yeah, I think for a SummerSlam show, I think we understand now why we've got a night 1 and night 2 based on, if this was the only night of SummerSlam, you would be very concerned, I think. But a 7 out of 10, I gave the whole thing. That's an average across my ratings, which I think is the same as what you gave anyway. I think so, because you rounded up. But yeah, it wasn't a bad show. It wasn't. Like, I truly believe that. But there were a couple of matches on the card I think could have been a lot better. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad show. There were some absolutely great moments, especially, the main event with CM Punk, with Gunther, with Seth, legendary cash-in. And yeah, we saw some standout performances across the card here from a number of people as well. So definitely good things to take into night 2. Our first half of SummerSlam is been and gone, and I think it was a success. I would agree with that as well. There's more to take from this one than there's more to dwell on and to be disappointed in, which is obviously the main thing that we need to be coming on out with. But in terms of this SummerSlam recap, it has been a bit of a discussion, and that's what we love to have when we get into these big nights. But that is all we've got to say, everybody. So thank you very much for tuning on into the push. If you like what we're putting out here, then please consider hitting a like on the video and subscribing to our channel to keep up with content coming out in the future. We've got our night 2 of SummerSlam reactions coming out very, very soon, as well as going back to our weekly recaps as well in the coming weeks. Please let us know in the comments what you think, whether you agree, disagree with anything that we discussed regarding SummerSlam, what your favourite matches were, and yeah, your favourite moments of the show. How good was that cash-in? It'll be talked about for a very long time. But this has been The Push with Nick and KP. Thanks to everybody for tuning on in, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy, everybody, and goodbye.